Welcome to another edition of Screencastify from your Minnesota Social Studies teachers. We're going to look at two groups of items today. We're going to look at the furs that the American Indians would have traded the European fur traders for, but we're going to start with the items the European fur traders brought over to trade with the American Indians. First thing we'll look at that the European fur traders brought to the American Indians was the musket. The musket was a useful tool in hunting, a useful tool in if there were ever some war, but it was very powerful but very cumbersome to load a musket. To load a musket, first of all, it would stand next to you on the butt of the gun, and you would take a powder horn like this, and you'd uncap it, and you'd have to pour a certain amount of gunpowder down the barrel. And then you take out this ramrod, and the ramrod's about the length of the barrel. And if the ramrod ever got broke or bent, you wouldn't be able to use it. So you pull the ramrod out, and you'd have to shove it down the barrel to push the powder all the way down here to where the flint is. Then you would use this tiny little ball, and you'd put that in the end of the musket, and take the ramrod again, and you'd have to seat it, S-E-A-T, into the gunpowder, and then put that ramrod back where it belongs. And then you're going to take a little percussion cap, like a little small piece of gunpowder. You're going to put it on this flint, pull the hammer back, and then you'd be able to shoot. And it was said if you were good, you could load a musket and shoot it 3 times in a minute.
Another important tool that the Europeans brought to the fur trade was the hand-forged axe. As you can see, it has a wooden handle. This was really important to the Dakota and Ojibwe because they could use it for many things. It helped with their hunting. It was an important tool for chopping down trees, and they also used it to chop holes in the ice to get them ready to go ice fishing.
Okay, some of the other things that came with the Europeans that the American Indians wanted, one of the really important things was the metal fish hook. Before that, they had either carved them out of wood or bone. This kind of changed the way they did their fishing. They were much more durable. Another metal item that was sought after by the Dakota and the Ojibwe was any kind of metal pots and pans. This is a metal cup that was used by the Dakota and the Ojibwe, just, again, making their life easier.
The fur trade brought something new for the Dakota and Ojibwe, which was different kinds of cloth. So they had wool then, and cotton and silk that they could use to make clothing. So instead of just wearing leather things all the time, they could all of a sudden, the women could sew different types of clothing for them. The other thing was, this is called a point blanket, and these stripes on here told how heavy it was and how big it was. And so this was like a double size, probably, blanket. These were nice and thick. And again, they didn't have to use the animal furs then. They could use these blankets instead. The blankets and the cloth were one of the most highly sought after items for the Native Americans.
Another important piece of items European fur traders were brought over was a flint and fire steel set. So this would be your fire steel, and you'd have a piece of flint so you could have a fire at will. It was very important that you put these two ends together, and then you'd strike it over some dry materials, which would create a spark and thus start a fire. These were very inexpensive, and a lot of times the fur traders would have given them away to the American Indians as a gesture of friendship.
Oh, hi guys. This is the mirror. And mirrors were very important to the Dakota and Ojibwe because reflections were a very important part of their culture. So this was a great trade item that they would get from the Europeans so that they could have that for the reflection. As you can see, I like to look at my reflection sometimes too. This is a glass bottle. And as you know what we use glass bottles for, this is for storing liquid. It was an important part of the trade as well because before they would store in other things, and now they have the glass bottles that are very practical for the purpose of storing items.
Okay, another thing that came from Europe that the American Indians wanted was all kinds of things that they would use for decorating. These are called seed beads, so they're really tiny little beads. They would sew these on their moccasins, on their clothing. There was a lot of quite a variety of beads that they would bring. Here's some other ones that are just some little tiny kind of shell ones that would have been gotten in trade. They also got jewelry. This is a copper bracelet. Buttons came from Europe. These are made from abalone shells. So kind of a clam or a, it's not a clam, what is it? I don't know, whatever abalone is. Another thing that they got was the thimble, so that when you were sewing, you wouldn't hurt your finger, because they also got needles from the Europeans. Another really important thing to go along with it was the scissors. Made sewing, made decorating their items much easier when they could cut the thread with scissors. The last thing is they would use bells. And again, for decorating, this would be sewn especially on dresses, things like that, so that they would jingle when they danced.
This was a Voyager's sash, and it was used for a lot of different things. They would wear it as a belt. Sometimes they would wear it to protect their backs around their waists. They would put it around their foreheads to help them haul things. And then they would sometimes wrap it around their legs so that their legs wouldn't get wet when they got in and out of the water. They could use it as a blanket or a rope in an emergency, and they even traded this. So lots of different purposes for this Voyager sash.
All right, sixth graders, we're gonna look at the fur items that the American Indians would have traded to the European fur traders. One of the things today in today's fur market is a lot of times there is still a market for these furs. It goes by the overall size in today's market of the animal, the quality of the fur, and whether it's a male or female. A lot of times the female will bring more money because the hide is shinier, it's more silky. First two we'll look at are the rabbit. This one happens to be a summer rabbit, and obviously you can see the coloring on it would blend in with the ground in the forest. And today's market, it's $7 to $9 for a summer rabbit. The winter rabbit fur would look like this, and the winter rabbit, obviously, it's white to blend in with the snow. And in today's market, it's anywhere from $15 to $20.
All right, this is the red fox. And the fuzzy tail. Red foxes were found all over in Minnesota, still are. They are a cousin to the dog. Really soft fur. Foxes eat rats, mice, rabbits, squirrels, birds, snakes, fish, berries, and nuts and seeds. They can bark like a dog. Sometimes they kind of do this screaming sort of thing if they're really scared. And in today's market, they go for about $25.
What I have here in front of me is the mink, and the mink is the most common water meat eater in Minnesota. It can swim, it can dive with ease, and it can hold its breath underwater for many minutes. Adult minks are about 14 to 20 inches long, so that'd be about from my elbow up to the tip of my fingers, if you can imagine how long they are. And sometimes they can be between, their pounds are between 2 to 4 pounds. They eat fish, they eat frogs, ducks, crayfish, eggs, lizards, and grubs, earthworms, mice, and muskrats. And they don't have many natural predators other than the otter. They mostly die from parasites and disease. It goes from anywhere from $5 to $10.
This is the pine marten, and it is mostly found up in northern Minnesota. It's super soft. It's considered like the cutest predator in Minnesota because it has a long body and rounded ears. For a while, because of all the logging, many of the pine martens were gone from Minnesota, but now by 1920, now they've started to come back a little bit. They eat mice, chipmunks, red squirrels, and insects, and they also eat berries and nuts in the summer. Oh, they are about $20 to $30.
This is a fisher. A fisher's a member of the weasel family, and it kind of resembles the large mink you had seen earlier. And large ones can weigh as much as a red fox, but its legs are much shorter than a fox. And they're very agile and extremely active predators. They're excellent at climbing trees. They can outclimb martens and red squirrels. They prey upon snowshoe hare, mice, squirrels, porcupines. They eat insects and berries. And despite its name, the fisher does not catch or eat fish. And a male would be about $40, where a female would be about $50.
This is a muskrat fur. A muskrat is really not a rat. It is the small cousin of a beaver. Muskrats can be up to 20 inches long, which includes its long hairless tail. That's why it kind of looks like a rat if you see it out of the water. Swims low in the water. It eats roots, stems, leaves, and fruits. And its main predators are the mink and the otters. So another little tool that I have here, this piece of wood is a muskrat stretcher. It probably, the similar things would have been used for some of these other animals, but the way that it would work is you would turn the animal hide or the pelt inside out and put it on here. I won't do it. We don't need to see quite that visual. You'd put it on here so that the first side was in, and then you would scrape off the flesh, but you could also stretch it to make it a little bit bigger. Forgot. This is worth about $3 or $4.
This is the beaver pelt, and as you know, this pelt was the prized pelt. The Dakota and Ojibwe were highly skilled in trapping the beaver, and the beaver pelt was in high demand by the Europeans. And as you all know, what did they make with this? You're right, they made hats. Okay, it took about 60 beavers to make a 90-pound pack. It took 10 muskrats or 21 squirrels to equal one of these beaver pelts. And it goes for, Mr. Manthe, can you help me out?
$10 to $14.
$10 to $14. Something I forgot to mention, I don't know, it's hard to see. We wish you guys were in school so you could actually feel this and see for yourself. But as you can see, the beaver pelt has a lot of long fur. And what they would do is they would remove that long fur so that it was more of this shorter fur that you can see here. And it's real soft. And that's what they use to make the hats.
This is the otter, and it's worth a lot more than the beaver right now. The otter is Minnesota's largest aquatic meat eater. It lives in most of Minnesota's lakes and streams, and it swims better than a lot of fish. It swims with just its head above the water, and it can get to be about 4 to 5.5 feet long, including this long tail on the end. So it's different colors, but it's usually the back and sides are dark brown to black, and then the underside is like gray and white. And it goes for between $20 and $30 a pelt.
Here is the deer hide, and this is probably the most common hide or fur that the American Indians would have trapped because they're so prevalent. But you can see the hide and the color of the deer. And if you look on the back side, this is very soft, the rawhide that could be used to make like parfleches and things like that. But this is a very common fur that the American Indians would have gotten. Today in a market with a nice quality fur, you can get anywhere from $15 to $20.
All right, so the last fur we have to show you is the wolf. Wolves can thrive in a lot of different habitats. They can be in forests, prairies, swamps, mountains, deserts. They get anywhere from 22 to 50 pounds. Lots of different colors. They can be this, really light color. They can be more of a grayish. They can be black or red. And they primarily feed off of large hoofed animals like deer, moose in Minnesota. They can also eat rabbits, some of the smaller things. And as you can tell, this one is the most expensive of our furs. This one was $450. Today, they can be anywhere from the $200 to $500 mark. They're more expensive if I didn't show the top side. This is its back. They cost more if they still have like the legs and the tail and everything on them.
All right, sixth graders, that is our tour of the fur trade items. As you can tell, the American Indians brought to the table the furs to trade to the European fur traders, and the other items that were made out of steel. the European fur traders brought to give to the American Indians. This happens to be a spear in which they would have used for fishing.